My new book, Pine Haven, is coming out this Saturday, which is June 21st, 2025. It is 10 short horror stories that all take place in the mountain town of Pine Haven. I was really inspired by Stephen King's use of towns like Derry and Castle Rock and Duma Key, just kind of a place where there's an evil that attracts things to it. So if that sounds like your vibe, or if you're a fan of this channel, I'll put a link in the description where you can find out more information about that. Welcome back to the campfire. Take a seat. Hope you're ready for another original horror tonight. If your blood runs cold, just get a little bit closer to the flames. Rena held the photograph with her fingertips as if it was just dragged out of the sewer, dripping with chunky brown liquid. She couldn't take her eyes off of it. Couldn't drop it. It clung to her hands like a bad dream right after waking. Her breathing quickened. The fingertips holding the top edges of the Polaroid went numb. She was looking at a photograph of herself, sleeping in bed. Her body under the covers, head exposed, all lit up in a harsh white light. She looked so pale and ghost-like in the picture. Her black hair further highlighted the sickly pallor her skin took on in the light. Her lips quivered and her stomach felt like it was rising to her throat. Whoever took this picture did it with the flash on. Why didn't she wake up? Never mind the floorboards that must have squeaked and her neighbor's dog out in their yard that must have barked. Why didn't she wake up to the flash? It was a harsh light that must have been accompanied by the sound of the camera taking the shot. She let go of the photo and it fell onto her cluttered desk. The sound of phones being answered and the clicks and clacks of keyboards sent her head reeling. She felt constricted. Like she was trapped in a straitjacket. She needed air. Now. Rena placed the notebook over the photo, stood up, and with head down, nearly sprinted through the office. A picture of me. Why? The Flash didn't wake up. He was in my room. What does he want? The Flash. It can't be him. Not after so long. Suddenly, papers were flying and she was falling backwards on her ass. What the hell? She propped herself up on her elbows and saw her boss, Mr. Mills. He was on the ground, covered in coffee-soaked paperwork. The mug now lay shattered on the ground. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. She crawled on her hands and knees, picking up the papers and offered them to Mr. Mills, who was now standing back up. He snatched the papers from her and sighed, Rena, in my office. He walked away, brushing his hand in vain at a large coffee stain on his white button-up shirt. He entered his office and stood holding the door open. Rena followed in. Sit. She did. Mr. Mills waddled over to his desk and sat on the edge of it like a high school lit teacher trying too hard to be cool. He leaned forward and put his hands on his knees. Where has your mind been, girl? Being called girl instantly transported her back to being chewed out by her father for coming home late as a teen. All her boss needed was a pair of furry sideburns, and he'd be giving her father a run for his money. Your performance has been lacking for weeks. Your team says you've been missing meetings and deadlines. And now you plow over me like I'm a cornfield ready for planting. Another trait Mr. Mills shared with dear old dad, corny corn jokes. I'm sorry, I just haven't been getting enough sleep lately. You're what, 25 years old now? A flicker of light to her left, outside the office window, caught her attention, almost like a flash. 30. His jaw hung loose in actual astonishment. Shit, girl. Old enough you ought to be caring for some little ones by now. And you can't get yourself enough sleep, she says. I'll tell you what, he said as he tried to swing his body off the desk. He failed the first time and needed a second swing of his legs to get his body off the edge. I'll give you one more week. Can't handle your responsibilities by then, you're out. I swear it won't happen again. I'll do my best. He waved his hand like a swarm of flies were flying out of her mouth. Don't need your swearing more than I need a fucking doctor tell me what to eat. I know Mickey D's will kill me, and I don't care. What I don't know is if you can do the job. He opened the door for her, but didn't even wait for her acknowledgement. Rena rose from her chair and left the office. A whoosh of air hit her backside and ballooned her blouse as the door slammed shut behind her. She walked back to her desk, head held low and focused on the ugly brown carpet. At least she wasn't running this time and didn't have to worry about crashing into someone. She resumed her seat at her desk. 1 week to get her act together? She didn't mind losing the job so much. She always had enough in savings to fall back on. It was the embarrassment of failure that made it a tough pill to swallow. There was nothing Rina Sagawa hated more than to be humiliated. But why was she so tired? The past week had come out of nowhere. Every morning she woke up exhausted. Once she brewed a pot of coffee without actually adding in the coffee. A mug of hot water wasn't exactly the best way to start off a Monday. The 40-minute commute was especially dangerous. At least in the morning she had the light of day to keep her awake. Her head dipped down and bowed the tiredness while she drove home in the dark was much more dangerous. She even drove by an accident just yesterday. White minivan bisected by a concrete divider. Shards of glass took up the reflection of the cop lights, reflecting their luminosity across the blood on the pavement. If she wasn't careful, that could be her. The photograph. She saw a corner of the picture sticking out from under the notebook. It revealed a white light highlighting the foot of her bed. Is this why I've been tired? Has this been happening the whole week? Messing with my sleep? She pulled the photo out and crumbled it up in her palm. She put the balled up thing into her purse and zipped it up. Rena wouldn't be going to the police with this. She had a feeling she knew exactly who was doing it, and if it was anything like last time, cops would be useless. This was something she needed to solve, quickly. And fuck this job and fuck Mr. Mills. He can go suck on some corn and cry about it. Rena packed up her things and left. She could feel the eyes of Mr. Mills peering out from in between the blinds of his office window as she stomped her way out of there. This wasn't quitting, but if he wanted to take it as such, well, go on then. She entered the elevator and punched the button for the garage on the top floor. Waiting for the doors to close, she saw Mr. Mills' head leaning out of his doorway, staring at her. Right before the door shut, she flipped her middle finger at him. She smiled, imagining his expression, his face turning cherry red and sweaty. The doors opened and she walked out. Her heels clacked on the cement, echoes shot out into the empty garage. They gave her the impression that somebody else was walking around in some unseen corner. The garage was full of the slightly sweet smell of gasoline. She wrapped her arms around her shoulders and shivered. She took out her keys from her purse and pressed the unlock button. Heard the click and saw the red lights flash from her blue Honda CR-V. The combo of colors reminded her of the accident from yesterday. Red and blue lights splashing over the freeway. Rena recognized that van. The driver had cut her off exactly 1 week before deciding to cut herself in half. Legs somewhere in the bottom of the crushed van, upper torso hanging out a window. She shook the images away, opened her car door and got inside. Shut the door, put on her seatbelt, safety first, and started the engine. And then she saw it. Wedged into the visor overhead, another photograph. She spun around in her seat but saw no one else in the car. Turning back around, she ripped the photo from the visor. Not one, but two pictures together. One was a picture of her, bathed in the white light of a flash as if it were taken in a dark room. It was in Mr. Mills' office, in the day. Him sitting on the desk's edge, leaning forward. The second, again, had the same washed-out flash effect. It showed her in her car, twisting around and looking into the back seat, wearing the same white blouse she had on now. Rena ripped both of them to pieces and tossed them out the window. She drove out of the garage. On her way home, she passed a bridge with a cement divider between the lanes. There was some shattered glass on the road and faint stains that were a light brown against the asphalt. She slowed down, took out her phone, and took a picture. Kyle was a nice man, a little too talkative for Rena, with a habit of picking at his teeth with his fingers, but cute enough to stomach his ramblings. Whatever his faults, he provided a distraction for the night. A relief from going home, for now at least. "So, you quit?" he said, between shoving a buttered roll into his mouth and then chewing it by moving his lower jaw too much, like a horse. "Yeah, not exactly, but I wouldn't be surprised if I'm fired. But you know what? It felt good to let that bastard know what I think of him." "Shit," he commented poignantly before attacking the next and last roll. Rena stared at him in horror as the bits of bread and streams of butter oozed down his chin. She glanced around their table. A dozen or so people sat at tables with white cloths draped over them. Candles lit, waiters stalking around wearing bow ties. Extreme embarrassment washed over her. There was only one way she knew for how to deal with that. "What are you going to do now?" he asked. "Don't know. I was thinking maybe I should start traveling. Time to get out and see new things, you know? It's been too long not being myself." "Cool. I always wanted to go to Thailand." He smiled. If there was ever a time to engage in his toothpicking, it should have been now. A piece of spinach was lodged between his upper front two teeth. "About that," she started. "I think we should—" "Hold that thought, babe. I need to hit the can." He rose and walked over to the men's bathroom. "See other people," she sighed. Kyle was a distraction, yes, but at what cost? She thought of her ex, Rob, as she twirled spaghetti around her fork. They had been happy once, like her and Kyle, until Rob ran away with her best friend, Christine. She found out on her birthday of all days. A casual glance at his phone brought her world tumbling down. Since then, she learned to let them go and be herself, or at least she tried. Maybe it was the time to do the same with Kyle. Let him go. I know how. She checked her watch. Kyle had been gone now 10 minutes. She texted him to see if he was okay. He responded immediately. What the fuck? I don't know how you did that, but seriously messed up. Going home now. Need time to think. She texted, what are you talking about? He replied, the picture in the urinal. Rena looked up from the phone and scanned the restaurant. Above the ambient chatter of the people, she thought she heard a camera zoom. What picture? She texted. This one, he replied. A few seconds later, it popped up on her chat. A picture of her and Kyle sitting at the table, this table, him shoving the last roll into his mouth. His eyes were crossed out with red ink, and he had a noose drawn in the same color around his neck. He sent another one. It showed him sleeping in his bed, ringed in the light of the flash. A hand with black painted nails, the rest of the person off camera, held out a knife over Kyle's sleeping body. Rena gripped her phone until her hands hurt and got up to leave. No dog barking, no floorboards squeaking. The house was still and silent. Doors locked, windows bolted shut. She knew it wouldn't make a difference, and never did. It's been 5 years, and nothing. Why all of a sudden? Rena sat on her sofa, circled in a golden light from a single lamp to her left, darkness everywhere else. An open cardboard box on the coffee table sat in front of her. She thumbed through a set of photographs, chucking them into the box when done. Her sister's daughter on her 8th birthday, standing over a chocolate cake with the whitest grin imaginable. A bay at sunset, pink rays of light stretching over dark blue waters, a single beam from the light of a fishing boat, a speck of light in the faded darkness of the photo. One last picture of a young man with scraggly black hair, a smile that beat all the odds and eyes that saw further than most people could dream. He had his arms slung over a pretty girl in a pink dress. Red marker had slashed out her eyes years ago. Rena kissed and caressed the man's face with her lips. Then she put the photos back into the box, lifted and carried it back into the closet, put it behind the false board on the wall, safe and sound. She walked to the kitchen, flipped on a light over the stove, and brewed another pot of coffee. No sleep means no more pictures. Well, that's what worked last time. Today was new. New kinds of photos, all in broad daylight, in real time. But it will end. It ended last time, and it will end this time too. She ground the beans in the top of the coffee machine, poured in the water, hit the start button so hard she moved the machine back. Flash. The blinding light lit up the kitchen for just a moment, and then it was gone. In that brief amount of time, it had succeeded in draining all the warmth from her body. Black spots floated over her vision, and it took a few seconds to regain her usual sight. She didn't want to turn around and face the open plan apartment. Anything could be standing there. Anyone. Him. Please, just leave me alone. Aside from her intensified breathing, all was silence. She waited until the coffee was done, poured a mug, straight and black, and took a swig. No sleep means no more pictures. She turned around. The stove light and the lamp by the sofa created 2 pools of relief. The corners of the apartment were painted in deep shadows. She calmly walked over to the sofa and sat down. On the coffee table, another photograph turned upside down. She held onto the coffee mug with both hands. A vain attempt to regain some warmth in her blood. By the time she gained the courage to look at the photo, her mug had grown lukewarm. She put the coffee down. With a shaking right hand, she was reminded of yesterday's accident. A woman's upper half lying halfway out of the passenger window. Glass embedded in the back of her head. Face turned away. An arm that hung limp, swaying like grass in the wind. The other shaking frenetically. A false appearance of life. It was just the nerves. She knew by experience. Rena turned the photo over. It was her, making coffee in the kitchen. It's not my fault. It was your fault. Please stop. The light in the kitchen burst. Rena screamed and fell off the sofa. The lamp's bulb exploded. The fading glow of the light's filaments silhouetted the figure of a man standing in her kitchen. A shorter woman was next to him. Then it was dark. A winding sound. The mechanical zoom sound of a camera trying to focus. Rena stood on shaking legs and tried to bury herself in the wall. Flash. Blinding light. Please, stop it. Footsteps leading away from the kitchen and moving into the hall by her bedroom. Flash. Please, stop it. The sound of someone running from the hall right into the living room, right in front of her. Winding up. Lens focusing. Flash. You motherfuckers, stop it. Rena sobbed and began to choke on her tears. The voice of a man, not more than 2 feet in front of her. Smile wide for me. Rena's head grew light and she almost fainted. Flash. She fell back against the wall and slid down to a sitting position, buried her face in her hands. Then, no more voices. No more flashes. She stayed sitting in that spot until the sun poked its way through her curtains. Only then did her muscles relax and did she dare to stand up. In the cool, pale light filling her living room, she saw it. A pile of photographs on the coffee table. Photographs on the sofa, pinned to the walls, to the ceiling, the same faces over and over again. She moved slowly as if the carpet were quicksand. Stress had evaporated any emotion in her. She sat down on the floor in front of the table, picked up the pictures and shuffled through them. A woman with short, curly brown hair, dressed in a pinstripe suit, driving a white minivan while talking to someone on the phone. The next, a pair of tiny hands, nails painted black, holding a brake cable, the other hand holding the wire cutter. The van smashed into the concrete divider, the woman's twitching hand still as death in the photograph hanging out the window. Rena threw these pictures on the floor. She went through the rest. The young, handsome man with the black hair. He was asleep in his bed next to a woman in a pink nightgown. Rob and Christine. White light from a flash enveloped them as they slept. The next photo showed the woman's eyes, not marked out with pen, but gouged out with a knife. The blade buried deep into her right socket so that it couldn't be seen. The next photo was of the man, naked, bound to the bed with razor wire, a look of abject terror on his face. Next was the same man, no longer afraid, no longer anything. A rope around his neck, eyes bulging in red, blood forming around the rope marks. The last photo was of Rena, not tucked under the covers under the white light, instead straddling the bodies on the bed, camera in her hand and turned towards her face, smile glistening in the harsh flash, specks of blood on her cheeks and teeth. She remembered what she said before she took that last picture of each of them, of everyone she took a photo of, before she stabbed out Christine's eyes and strangled Rob, and not only cut that bitch in the van's brakes, but also ran her off the road. Smile wide for me. Rena ripped each photograph into pieces, screaming as her black painted nails dug into the sheets and tore them into ribbons. She scattered the pieces all over the living room, like candy from a piñata. Why won't you leave me alone? Why won't you just stay dead? She ran across the living room, grabbed her keys by the front door, and raced into her car. She hit the ignition and drove the car out of the drive. She accelerated the gas and flew out of the cul-de-sac as if it was on fire. The car blasted past the stop sign and she careened right into Martin Lane going 80 miles an hour. The winding of a camera, the zooming focus of the lens, from the backseat. Flash. The light reflected off the rearview mirror and blinded her. The car swerved into the oncoming traffic lane. She turned the wheel left and slammed on the brakes. They didn't feel like listening to her. She slammed her foot into the brakes again and again, but no response. In a second that felt like a lifetime, she saw the car fly into the concrete divider, saw the airbag balloon towards her chest, saw the metal and the glass rain down on her, saw the twitching hand of the woman in the passenger seat, holding a camera, smiling through shattered teeth. Before her body and the car became one, Rena heard her say, "Smile wide for me."